She lived with her mom, Maria, and her stepdad, Leo. Susana was the youngest in her family. Her sisters, Jasmine and Jalissa, were older than her. And she also had a stepbrother that she loved very much, though Jasmine was her closest friend. Susana lived in Norcross, Georgia, and in the summer of 2020 and was a freshman in high school. She went to Meadow Creek High School and was a cheerleader. The other kids she went to high school with looked up to her. Most people who knew Susana loved her because of how kind and loving she was to others. Aside from that, she was a very good musician. She loved teaching herself how to play the guitar and the ukulele and had a beautiful voice for singing. She loved spending time with all of her friends, and of course, she liked spending a lot of time with her closest family. Around 4 p.m. on July 26th in 2022, Susana came home from work with her mom for the day. Her mom would take her to work so she could make extra money, especially since it was summer and she didn't have to go to school. She got ready and went to her friend's house around 6 p.m. She wore blue pants, a yellow tank top, and white Crocs. There were about 0.9 miles between her friend's apartment and where she lived with her family on Santa Ana Drive. She sent her mom a text message when she got to her friend's place to let her know she had arrived safely and had spent a few hours with her friend. Around 9:40 p.m., Susana texted her mom to let her know she was going to be heading home soon. She left her friend's house around 10 p.m. and began her walk, but she never got home. Because time went by, her mom kept calling and waiting, but she never answered. When Susana's family found out the next morning that she still wasn't home, they were very worried. Even more worrying was the fact that Susana's phone was now turned off. She wasn't the type of teen who wouldn't come home and wouldn't talk to their parents. She did sometimes act like a normal teen to her family, but other than that, she was a good, well-rounded teenager who kept in touch with her family when she went away. She didn't like going to parties either. She was responsible and she followed the rules. When she didn't come home, her family felt very worried about where she was. When they still couldn't reach Susana by 9 a.m., they tried to call the Gwinnett Police Department because no one had heard from Susana in almost 12 hours. The cops told them not to worry yet because they would have to wait 48 hours before she would be considered missing. They said this because young girls often run away with their boyfriends or go to parties. So, even though Susana's family begged and tried to explain to the police that she wasn't that kind of girl, the police wouldn't really help until the 48-hour mark was passed. We also know that the first 48 hours are usually the most important for finding them safely. Due to how important the time was, Susana's family did not want to wait another 36 hours and hope that she would get home by that time. They were getting more and more worried by the minute. They were aware that something wasn't right. Since the cops weren't there to help, they pretty much started their own search and investigation to find Susana and bring her home. They put up flyers, asked everyone they saw if they had seen her, posted about her on social media, and talked about her with anyone who would listen. Thank goodness someone nice stepped up and gave a surveillance video of Susana walking toward her neighborhood after 10 p.m. Since the spot where the video was taken is less than a minute from her neighborhood, Susana's family knew for sure that she planned to come home. They took that back to the police department in the hopes that they would finally help, but for some reason the police still weren't willing to help. Clear that they didn't think the case was that important, which is crazy. There was a clear evidence that Susana wasn't some rebellious teen who wasn't coming home on purpose, so the fact that they didn't listen to her family when they begged them to at least tell the public that she was missing is frustrating, as if the surveillance video wasn't enough to worry about. Phone location information was pulled from 10:07 p.m. to 10:21 p.m. They found that a tracking app on her phone showed that she was walking along Singleton Road. From 10:21 p.m. to 10:26 p.m. her phone data showed that she was last seen on Oak Lock Trace, which is close to Steve Reynolds Boulevard. From the map and the history, her family knew that there was something wrong, because there was no way she could have walked up to Oak Lock Trace from Steve Reynolds Boulevard. She must have been driving. Also, they knew she wasn't walking there because the surveillance video showed her definitely walking toward home, and there was no video of her walking the other way. The police still didn't seem concerned by what the data showed. Susana's family was pretty much left on their own to wonder why the cops didn't seem to care about her disappearance after she went missing. Finally, on August 29th, over a month after Susana vanished, the police released a statement about Susana being missing. They claimed that detectives had exhausted all leads and that they needed the public's help. However, in that same statement, they said, and I quote, "While any missing juvenile is considered endangered, at this time there is no indication that Morales is in any specific danger, and it is not believed that she is being held against her will." The police would only say that they were following up on any tips every time someone from the news station asked them to, but there were no real breakthroughs. It was Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and Susana hadn't been heard from after New Year's. During that time, the police did not give out any more details, but her family never gave up. They were always on the move, following up on any tips they came across, even ones from out of state. On February 6th in 2023, someone in the woods called the cops and said they thought they found naked body parts. The place in question was more than 20 miles from Norcross and was right on the lines of Gwinnett County and Barrow County. At first, police clearly did not have a person's identity. Next day, after finding the body parts but before they knew who it was, the cops decided to do a grid search of the area to look for clues. A gun was found near where the body had been found during the grid search. The body they found didn't look like it had been shot in any way, but that was a strange found, and they began to think it might have had something to do with the death of the victim. The cops said the next day, on February 8th, that the body parts that were found were actually Susana's. Who would do something like that was the big question. No one knew of any enemies Susana had. She was happy, loyal, and a positive force, so why would anyone want to hurt her? Law enforcement was able to use their system to look up the gun's serial number. That number led them to Miles Bryant, who is 22-year-old and used to be in the army, and now works as a police officer in Doraville, which is just across the town from Norcross. Finding a fellow officer's gun near a crime scene was shocking in and of itself, but then they realized that the gun had been reported stolen at 11 a.m. on the 27th, just 2 hours after Susana's disappearance was reported to the county police. The county cops were told about the disappearance. Miles said that his wallet and service ID had been stolen along with his gun. He told the police that he had left his truck open by mistake and someone had stolen his things. Before long, the cops had put together all the information they had gathered during their investigation. They found that Miles also lived at the Sterling Glen apartment complex. Now, remember that Susana had gone to see her friend and she lived in the Sterling Glen complex. Miles not only lived there, but he was also a courtesy officer for that complex, and in a very strange and shocking turn of events, it was found that Susana's house could be seen from Miles' apartment. Too many things did not fit together, and Brian Miles was arrested on February 13th. Charges of concealing a death and a false report of a crime. Police claimed that Miles had dumped Susana's naked body in the woods. The report he made about his truck being broken into and the items stolen was deemed to be a false report. He was arrested at his apartment and neighbors witnessed a bedsheet being taken out of his car. After the arrest, it didn't take long for people to begin speaking about previous and recent interactions that they had experienced with Miles. On February 22nd, the Gwinnett Police Department held a press conference where they announced that Miles was being charged with kidnapping and murder. On July 26 at approximately 6 p.m., we know that Susana Morales had left her home on Santa Ana Drive in Norcross and walked a short distance to the Sterling Glen apartment complex on Indian Trail Road. There, she met with her friend for about 4 hours, and at about 10 o'clock p.m., she began her trek back to her house. We know that between 10 and 10:30 p.m., Susana must have had an interaction with an individual and ultimately was not seen or heard from again. In May 2023, Bryant entered the courtroom handcuffed. One of his family members broke down in tears and walked out of the courtroom. The prosecution then described incidents of Brian using his position of power as a Doraville police officer to commit sexually deviant acts, including breaking into women's homes and stealing their underwear, and on one occasion accessing a woman's phone to steal sexual videos while he was on a duty and in uniform, asked her to utilize her cell phone because he needed to log into his bank, and instead of doing so, he accessed her videos and sent himself videos of conducting sexual activity on her phone. The police believe that Susana was killed sometime between 10 p.m. on the 26th and 2 a.m. on the 27th. Unfortunately, going off of that timeline means that by the time Susana's family went to the police, she had already been murdered, but sadly enough, to this day, they still don't know how she was murdered, leaving her family to question what exactly happened to Susana. The only thing law enforcement has shared regarding her cause of death is that they do not believe she was shot. However, they do believe that Susana was likely harmed and violated in a sexual manner and then killed. Before her body was disposed of in the woods, while the timeline shows the police department likely could not have stopped the murder of Susana. My thoughts and prayers go to the family of Susana Morales. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please take a quick second to do so. Thank you.